Bryan Kohberger, the man accused of the tragic University of Idaho student murders, well, they're getting into a lot of stuff. IGG, DNA, uh, cell phone tracking, anything and everything that could possibly point to Bryan Kohberger being the main suspect, being the murderer. The allegations are out there, but Ann Kohberger is trying to get it all thrown out, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We'll see how well that works. Joining us is retired FBI Special Agent Robin Dreeke, former chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program. Robin, with your background in behavioral analysis, what can you tell us about the mindset of someone, we're just going to start broadly, who might commit such a crime like this?
Oh,
Broad
the mindset
question.
of yeah, the mindset of someone might have committed. Well, it looked to me to be a potential serial killer in the making. If you're looking at behaviors with multiple murders, but as my good friend Dr. Chris Mahandi says, it's someone with a broken brain. Because we had a really heinous murder. We had a in person with knives, with knife wounds, stabbings. And then if you look at the overlay of the accusations of Kohberger and you do the behavior pattern of Kohberg throughout his life, it fits a life arc of someone that was on that journey to potentially do that. And that's what the prosecution is going to be trying to lay out.
And there's a lot of evidence to point that way. The biggest thing here, the biggest argument, though, that's being made right now, and as of this recording, we do not have a decision from the judge, is okay, step one, the main thing that led them to Kohberger was the knife sheath DNA. And how did they conclude where that came from? IGG, investigative genetic genealogy technology, which basically you go into another database other than CODIS. You go into the one that Ancestry and 23andMe and all those throw that information into. And they narrowed it down. They narrowed it down to the Kohberger family, to his father specifically. Then from there, they went and figured out Kohberger. After a cheek swab, that DNA his matched to the sheath. It's like 1 to 1 billion odds or something that it's
Right.
not him. That has the DNA on the sheath. Not to a billion odds that he's the killer, but the DNA of his is on the sheath. So the big explanation is, how did it get there if you're not the guy? It takes a bit to open up a K-bar knife sheath. It designed purposely for that because it can be dangerous and you don't want it to just pop out of your pocket. If you actually grab the blade itself, it takes some pushing. So that would make sense why there is touch DNA on it, because you got to get your thumb in there however you're opening it, which would then be enough pressure to get that DNA on there. So it's not just like, oh, we looked at it at the store one day and put it back. Especially what will be interesting to see, which you don't have the receipts on yet, his shopping history. That's another thing they're trying to
I think
argue
I
out.
think I saw or I read it from Howard Bloom, who wrote the book. What was it? When Night Comes
Yeah.
Calling. That I think someone reported he actually has. They saw how he bought it on Amazon too.
Hmm.
So that's part of more data points to say, I got a lot of crazy going on here.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, you have that, you have all these pieces, but it goes back initially to the IGG. The argument at
Right.
hand here is uh, using IGG to begin with would have never led to any of the other investigative pieces that they found. Of course, if you don't have a suspect, you can't dig into the suspect. But
Right.
they're saying because they used IGG, everything should be thrown out. Now, I know Ann Taylor is going to try and argue this. This is her job. But at the same point, there are no rules for this. There's no law that says you can't use IGG. There's no law that says if you're investigating a murder of 4 college kids in your town and you're trying to figure out who might be behind it after running that DNA through CODIS and no matches, well, hey, here's this other database we can look at. There are no laws preventing us from doing it. You have some people who think this is wrong. There's a lot of people who think things are wrong. It doesn't change that people use them or that they can use them. There's no law preventing it. So I don't really quite get how she can come in and say that this was wrong and everything should be thrown out when there were no rules in place to prevent an investigator from using yet another tool that did successfully lead to who had the DNA on the knife. The science is not in question. It's more so the ethics and morality of it. But again, no laws.
Yeah, so from what I understand, and this is really complex, like you said, there's no question about the DNA match. This is a DNA match for Kohberger, just because it is. I mean, it's like you said, it's 1 in a billion that it's not, and so it's a definite DNA match. I think what she, from what I'm understanding, because again, we start getting the legalese of what came first, the chicken or the egg.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't believe she's arguing the DNA on the knife sheath because that's touch DNA and it's in a database from the dad. I think what she's going after is the rest of identifying Kohberger by what happened after that point. And that is, so if they then illegally violated his rights by identifying uh, by by getting cell phone data because of illegally gotten
Yeah.
things. In other words, using, I think it was, so you can't argue that the dad popped up there, but then how they got his swab is what's I think in question.
They
Is
had a
like, did they
warrant
have a
for it, or for the
yeah,
dad, or
but it's like when did they have that warrant? I know that there's a timing issue, I think, is
yeah.
what she's trying to argue about, because then it becomes fruit of the poison tree. If you got one thing because something was gotten illegally, then everything else falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
It's a stretch. Because from what I understand, from what the judges' rulings were on and their judges' thoughts, is I don't think it's going to hold up. But hats off to her. If you commit a murder or accused of committing for a murder, hire her, man. She's going at it hard. I don't think it's going to hold up, but it'll be interesting if it does.
Do you think there should? I mean, so it's just clear because I know they're arguing that it was gathered illegally, but I don't know how anyone can even argue it's gathered illegally when there's no laws that would make it illegal.
Right.
That's the part. I mean, you can just, it's like we're just going to throw this term out there and hope it sticks, and people are going to believe, oh yes, this was gathered illegally. No, it wasn't. It really was not gathered illegally. You may not like it, you may not agree with it, you may not feel that that information should be out there, but the reality is, it is, and it's not going to change. It is in existence now, and people can access it. You don't even have to do 23andMe or
Right.
Ancestry to be in that database. It's basically, if you have out to a second cousin, you're in there. So that's basically about 90% of the population. Whether you did the test or not, they can figure out who you are because your cousin, your aunt, your whoever, people have done this. And eventually, I imagine in the next year or so, it's going to be probably 100% of our population that is in there. And I get that is the argument. But with that being the argument, how does that hold up without any laws in place? Which the answer just may be it won't.
Right. So let's reverse it now.
Yeah.
So speaking as the layman that we are on this, on the legal side as we are, it makes no sense that would hold up. So let's assume that she knows it won't hold up as well. And we've talked about this also on this case. Her main job, I think, is to keep him alive.
Yeah.
And if they're going, so think about this: if you're going to go for the death penalty still, and you're going to need a jury to have beyond reasonable doubt, and a jury is going to have a certain emotion tied to killing someone or their decision ending someone's life, you're going to sow as many seeds of doubt as you possibly can. And so I think this, if it makes no sense, then what's the other purpose behind it? Or it could have a dual purpose. Go at it anyway because that's what I'm paid to do. But also, I'm going to be sowing seeds of doubt in any potential jury pool. So I think that's also part of the strategy.